Good morning, Year 4. Today is Thursday the 11th of February and this video is for the children who have the Year 4 Maths Workout Exercise book, and today we are continuing to look at our learning question, which is, can I work out fraction calculations? Okay, before we move on, I just want you to have a go at this warm-up activity. True or false, to find 3/8 of a number, you divide by 3 and multiply by 8. You need to convince me whether this is right or wrong. So show your working out as we have been doing on the previous videos, where we do our two-step where we work out for our two-step method for when we find out the fraction calculation of a number. Okay, and tell me whether or not this boy is right or wrong. Okay, very quickly just going to revisit fractions. So the number on the top half of the fraction is the numerator, and that is the number of parts we have, and the denominator is the total parts in a whole. Okay, and I have got a beautiful drawing of a circle there that's split into fifths, and it's coloured in 2/5 of my circle. So you can see that we have 2 parts of a whole, which is out of 5. Okay, so question 1 says work out the answers to the fraction calculations. So we need to work out 3/4 of 80 and add it to a half of 8. Now I've got a little picture in the top right hand corner of my slides, and this picture says break it down, because we're going to break it down into simple steps that make it easier for us to understand the method that we are doing. Okay, so recapping what we did yesterday, step 1, divide the whole number by the denominator. So where is the denominator? What are we doing? So dividing the whole number by the denominator. Step 2, you're going to multiply the answer with the numerator, and step 3, you're going to add your answers from each one together. Okay, so 3/4 of 80, so you're going to divide 80 by 4, which will give you the answer 20. You will do 20 times by 3, which will give you the answer of 60. So they're your first 2 steps for that part. You then work out a half of 8. So you're going to do 8 divided by 2, which equals 4. And then you're going to do 4 times by 1 is 4. Now the answers that you got from multiplying your numbers together, so your 60 and your 4, you're going to add them together. So 60 plus 4 is 64. So therefore 3/4 of 80 add a half of 8 is 64. Now use this slide to help you answer the rest of the questions. Remember, you're going to break it down into 3 steps. Step 1 is to divide. Step 2 is to multiply. Step 3 is to add. Okay? Okay, moving on to question 2. Fill in the missing fractions in the calculations below. So I've got a box with a question mark, an addition sign, 4/10, and then equals 9/10. Now, thinking carefully about what you already know about the inverse and what we need to do when we work out the inverse, how do you think we work this answer out? So how do we work this out? Have a think. Now, I would recommend you have a go at working this one out before we go through it together, just to see if you're right or not, and then we will move on. Okay, so have a think. How might you work this out? Okay, so we need to take our numerator away in order to work out the answer. Our denominator stays the same because they're measured in tenths. We have 10 whole, we have a whole number of 10, but we're looking at 4/10 and 9/10. In order to work out what the first number is in that box, we need to take away 9/10 from 4/10. Okay, so we are using the inverse to work out our missing fraction. So 9 take away 4 equals 5. Now everyone knows that the biggest number always goes first in a subtraction sum, because you would have a negative number if you had done 4 take away 9. And we aren't doing negative numbers, we're looking at how to work out our missing fraction. So our biggest number always comes first, okay? So 9 take away 4 equals 5. So therefore our fraction, our answer to our missing fraction should be 5/10, okay? So 5/10 add 4/10 equals 9/10. Now that we've done that together, I would like you to have a go at answering all the other questions in question 2. Pause the video if you need to, answer your questions, and then press play when you are ready. Okay, so question 3 is asking you to fill in these tables. So you've got 2 tables, A and B, and you've got fractions of a selection of different numbers. Now, recapping what we did in question 1, we're going to use the first 2 steps that we used in question 1 to help us to work out these answers. So step 1, we're going to divide the whole number by the denominator, and then we're going to multiply the answer with the numerator. So for a half of 16, we would do 16 divided by 2 times by 1, okay? So a half of 16, 16 divided by 2 is 8, 8 multiplied by 1 is 8, so therefore the answer must be 8, okay? So have a go at doing those yourself. There are a lot of them, so take your time, and I would double check your answers as well just to make sure that they are correct. But please take your time with this. Remember to break it down into those steps where you're dividing and then you are multiplying, okay? And then check your answers afterwards if you need to using a calculator. Okay, so your challenge for today is to complete the table. So you have a column of pictorial representations, you have your fraction equivalents and your words. So some of you have asked for additional practice on equivalent fractions. So that's why this challenge is here. This challenge is for children who feel like they could do with extra practice looking at equivalent fractions. Okay, so I wanted to do this one because it has been requested by quite a few of you in the emails that you aren't confident with equivalent fractions. Okay, now tomorrow's lesson we won't be using the workbook. We will be looking at a series of different questions together because I think we could do with some more practice looking at fractions because you haven't learnt about it in school. So I think the more that we can cover over these videos for home learning, the more confident that you will be when you go into school and we do recap fractions in school, okay? So you've got your pictorial representations. So the first one with the yellow box, the ones shaded in yellow, your first one is 2/3 and your second one is 4/6. And the second column is telling you that 2/3 is the exact same as 4/6. And we can see from the pictorial representations that that is correct. They have the same amount, it's just that the fractions are written differently. Remember what we said about equivalent fractions? They are written differently, but they show the same amount. And then for your final box, you'll be writing this in words. So you would write 2/3 is equivalent to 4/6. Okay. So your task is to complete the remaining 2 boxes in the table where you look at the pictorial representations, you write them down as an equivalent fraction, and then you write it out as a sentence, okay? So try your best for me, please. Now, some of the children who don't feel confident with this is a great chance to have another go to revisit and recap. If you do feel confident, I still want you to have a go because this is something that we are needing to have additional practice on because it's something that you need to know in year 4, okay? So try your best for me. Let me know how you get on, how you find it, okay? So reflecting on today's lesson, I want you to finish this sentence. So the method I used the most today was, what method was it that you used? And perhaps how did you find it? So we were using a method to work out fraction calculations. We used it to make it a little bit easier for us. We broke it down so that we could understand it a little bit better, so we could take our time in approaching these questions to make sure that we fully understood what we needed to do and what our answer was going to be. Now, this is the last section in your maths workbook that covers fractions, okay? So tomorrow I aren't going to be using that book, so you're going to need pieces of paper or your exercise books to work from, because we're going to be revisiting some of our own questions that link to all of the work that we have been doing on fractions this week. Okay, because a lot of you have said you want more practice with fractions, and instead of moving on to a new topic before half term, I thought what we could do is we could spend one last lesson on fractions to make sure that we fully understand what it is that we are going to be doing and the different methods that we need to use to complete fractions, okay? Now, I know a lot of you have said that you're struggling with decimals as well. Perhaps we could have a recap lesson looking at decimals at some point in the near future, but at the moment I feel like we need to get our fractions nailed, because as soon as we understand fractions, we can get to grips with decimals, okay? So please send in photographs of your work from today, and please come back to watch the video tomorrow, because this is going to support those children that need extra practice. So if you're one of those children that think, I need more practice with my fraction calculations, then you need to watch tomorrow's video, okay? Now there will be a series of questions where you may have to do some drawing of diagrams. That's fine, do not worry, take your time, okay? If there are certain questions that you want less confident on, focus on them. It's just trying to cover all bases to make sure that if there's certain things that you are unsure about year 4, it's there in the lesson tomorrow, okay? So, revisiting our reflection, which method did you use the most today, okay? And I will see you tomorrow. Bye.